The wind howled through the desolate streets as I stood before the imposing facade of the Grand Bellevue Hotel, its grandeur now a faded memory of its former glory. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation as I stepped through the creaking double doors, the dimly lit lobby casting eerie shadows across the worn carpets. It was the kind of place you'd find in old novels, the kind where secrets lingered in the corners and whispers of the past echoed in the hallways. Little did I know that my decision to check into room 333 that fateful night would plunge me into a chilling nightmare that still haunts my every waking moment. The Grand Bellevue had once been the pinnacle of luxury, a haven for the elite and the well-to-do. But now, it was a crumbling relic, its grandeur faded, its charm replaced by an oppressive air of decay. The receptionist, a woman with weary eyes and a forced smile, handed me an ancient brass key with a worn tag marked 333. She didn't say a word, merely gestured towards the grand staircase that led to the upper floors. Her silence sent a shiver down my spine, but my curiosity got the better of me. As I climbed the winding stairs, each step seemed to echo with the whispers of countless guests who had come and gone. The hallway on the third floor was dimly lit, and the flickering bulbs overhead cast eerie, elongated shadows that danced on the peeling wallpaper. My footsteps echoed in the silence as I made my way to room 333. The door creaked open with reluctance, revealing a room that seemed untouched by time. The heavy curtains were drawn shut, shrouding the room in darkness. Dust motes swirled in the faint light that filtered through the gaps. The antique furniture poured the weight of decades, and the air was thick with a musty old-world scent. I made my way to the window, pulling the curtains aside to reveal a view of the moonlit courtyard below. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the overgrown garden. I felt a sudden chill, and when I turned around, I froze. There at the foot of the bed stood a figure, shrouded in darkness. I could make out nothing of their features, only a silhouette that seemed to waver and shift. My heart thundered in my chest as I took a step back, my voice catching in my throat. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer. No response, just an oppressive silence that seemed to thicken the air. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for the doorknob, but the door refused to budge. I was trapped, alone with this shadowy presence. As I watched in horror, the figure slowly moved towards me, its movements unnatural and disjointed. I could hear a low guttural whisper that seemed to come from all around me, and it filled my mind with a profound sense of dread. "Leave this place," it hissed, its voice a haunting chorus of 1,000 souls. "Leave before it's too late." I didn't need to be told twice. With all the strength I could muster, I threw my weight against the door, and this time it gave way. I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I made my way to the lobby, where the receptionist was still seated behind the desk. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "Room 333, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's always room 333. I demanded answers, but she would say no more. The other guests in the lobby seemed oblivious to the terror that had just unfolded, lost in their own world. I left the Grand Bellevue that night, my mind reeling from the encounter. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed something beyond the realm of the living, something ancient and malevolent that had taken residence in room 333. Over the weeks that followed, I became obsessed with uncovering the truth about the Grand Bellevue and room 333. I delved into its history, seeking out old records and speaking to anyone who had ever stayed there. What I discovered sent chills down my spine. Room 333 had a dark history, a history that stretched back over a century. It had been the site of a gruesome murder-suicide in 1897, and ever since, guests who had stayed in that room have reported strange and terrifying occurrences. Whispers in the dead of night, shadowy figures, and a sense of overwhelming dread. I couldn't let it go. I had to return to the Grand Bellevue to confront whatever malevolent force resided in room 333. Armed with knowledge and determination, I checked back into the hotel, determined to face my fears. That night, I entered room 333 with trepidation, armed with a small bag of salt, a crucifix, and a heart full of resolve. The room was as oppressive as ever, the air thick with a palpable malevolence. I began to chant incantations, sprinkling salt around the room and clutching the crucifix tightly. The shadows in the corners seemed to writhe and recoil, and I felt a searing cold at my back. "Leave this place," I commanded, my voice steady despite my fear. "You are not welcome here." Suddenly, the room erupted in a cacophony of unearthly screams and wails. The figure that had haunted me before materialized, its form shifting and contorting in agony. With a final, agonized shriek, it dissipated into a swirling vortex of darkness, leaving the room bathed in an eerie silence. I knew that I had won, that I had banished the malevolent force that had plagued room 333 for so long. As I left the Grand Bellevue for the final time, I couldn't help but wonder how many others had come before me, how many had fallen victim to the horrors that lurked within those walls. The Grand Bellevue still stands today, a crumbling relic of its former glory. Room 333 remains locked, a testament to the horrors that once dwelled within. And though I may have banished the malevolent force that haunted that room, I can never truly escape the nightmares that still haunt my every waking moment. So, if you ever find yourself drawn to the eerie allure of the Grand Bellevue Hotel, heed my warning. Stay far away from room 333, for there are horrors within that no one should ever have to face. Have you ever stayed in a hotel room that seemed to whisper secrets in the dead of night? I have. It happened during a business trip to the quaint town of Willowbrook. My stay at the Willowbrook Inn started like any other, but as the days turned to nights, I found myself trapped in a waking nightmare. It's a story I've hesitated to tell, fearing that reliving those dark moments might breathe life back into the horror I encountered. Yet, I feel compelled to share my tale, a cautionary one, about the room that no one should ever enter, room 237. The Willowbrook Inn was an aging but charming establishment. Its Victorian architecture was a testament to a bygone era, and the lobby was adorned with faded photographs that hinted at its storied past. As a weary traveller, I was drawn to its vintage allure, and when the receptionist handed me a tarnished brass key with a cryptic room number etched onto it, I was too tired to question it. That would be my first mistake. Room 237 was tucked away on the top floor, accessible by a narrow staircase that seemed almost forgotten by the rest of the building. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and I entered a dimly lit chamber that was heavy with the scent of old wood and mothballs. The antique furniture had an air of faded grandeur, and the heavy curtains blocked out most of the daylight. Yet, it wasn't the room's dated appearance that unnerved me. It was the unsettling silence that pervaded the space, as if the very walls held their breath. The first night was uneventful, but my unease grew as the hours passed. It wasn't the eerie creaks in the floorboards or the distant murmur of the wind that unsettled me. It was the whispers, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to emanate from the corners of the room. I dismissed it as fatigue, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. The second night, however, was different. I woke to find the room cloaked in darkness, the curtains pulled aside by unseen hands. Moonlight spilled into the room, revealing shadowy figures standing at the foot of my bed. Their forms were indistinct, like phantoms, and I could barely discern their features. Panic seized me, and I reached for the lamp on the bedside table, but it remained lifeless, as if the room itself resisted my efforts. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. The figures didn't answer, but their whispers grew louder, a chorus of eerie voices that seemed to resonate from within the walls. It was a cacophony of despair and longing, and it chilled me to my core. Unable to bear it any longer, I fled the room, racing down the narrow staircase and into the lobby. The receptionist was unfazed, as if she had heard this tale countless times before. "Room 237, she said with a knowing look. "It has a history." It was then that I learned the dark secrets of the Willowbrook Inn. Room 237 had been the site of a tragic event decades ago. A guest had checked in with his family and in the dead of night had gone mad, committing unspeakable acts of violence before taking his own life. Since that night, room 237 had been plagued by eerie occurrences, whispers, ghostly apparitions, and the overwhelming sense that the past could never be laid to rest. I couldn't stay in that room, but the Willowbrook Inn was fully booked, and I had no choice but to brave another night. I spent the hours in the lobby, trying to shake off the terror that gripped me. As dawn broke, I decided to confront room 237 one last time, armed with determination and a prayer for protection. Inside the room, I lit a candle and began to speak aloud, addressing whatever entities lingered there. "I mean no harm," I implored. "I seek only to understand and to offer my empathy." For a moment, the room fell silent, and I thought perhaps my words had been heard. But then, the shadows coalesced, forming into the ghostly figures once more. Their whispers grew into a mournful lament, as if they were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. I couldn't stay any longer. With a heavy heart, I left the room, never to return. I checked out of the Willowbrook Inn, haunted by the knowledge that I had encountered something beyond explanation. To this day, I carry the memory of room 237 with me, a reminder that there are places in this world where the past lingers, where the echoes of tragedy and despair are etched into the very fabric of reality. So if you ever find yourself in Willowbrook and are handed a tarnished brass key with 237 etched onto it, I implore you, dear reader, to turn and walk away. Some mysteries are best left undisturbed, and some rooms should never be entered. You ever get that strange sensation when you walk into a place? A shiver down your spine, a feeling like you've just stepped into the unknown. I couldn't shake that feeling when I arrived at the Pine Grove Lodge. Nestled in the heart of a dense, foreboding forest, it was the kind of place that appeared tranquil on the surface but held secrets in its shadows. Little did I know that my stay at this enigmatic lodge would unearth a chilling tale of hotel rooms, mystery, and the sinister nature of human behavior. The Pine Grove Lodge was a quaint, rustic retreat, surrounded by ancient trees and boasting an aura of seclusion. It was the perfect place for a weekend getaway. The lodge's exterior was adorned with quaint wooden carvings, and the scent of pine hung in the air. The receptionist, a woman with an enigmatic smile and piercing eyes, handed me an antique key with the room number 213 etched onto it. As I walked down the dimly lit corridor, I couldn't help but notice the peculiar behavior of the other guests. They whispered in hushed tones and exchanged knowing glances as if sharing a dark secret. It sent a shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off, attributing it to the lodge's quaint charm and the mystique of its location. I unlocked the door to room 213, and it swung open with a faint creak, revealing a cozy but dated interior. Heavy curtains blocked out most of the natural light, casting the room in a perpetual twilight. The first night passed without incident, but the following evening brought a strange occurrence. As I settled into bed, I heard a low guttural growl emanating from the corner of the room. My heart raced as I scanned the dimly lit space, and that's when I saw it. an ominous, shadowy figure hunched in the corner. "Who's there?" I stammered, my voice quivering. The figure remained silent, but its malevolent presence hung heavily in the air. I reached for the bedside lamp, but as I flicked the switch, the room plunged into darkness. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for my phone, using its feeble light to illuminate the room. The figure had disappeared, but an unsettling feeling lingered. It was as if the room itself had turned against me. I couldn't explain what had happened, but it left me shaken to my core. The next day, I decided to explore the lodge, hoping to uncover some answers. The other guests, however, seemed even more aloof than before. They avoided eye contact, and their whispers grew more frantic. It was as if they were trapped in a shared nightmare, and I was an outsider who didn't belong. I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. The lodge had secrets, and I was determined to uncover them. As I wandered the dimly lit hallways, I came across a locked door with a sign that read "Staff Only." It piqued my curiosity, and I couldn't resist the urge to investigate. That night, I returned to the room, armed with the determination to confront whatever lurked in the shadows. I positioned myself in the corner where I had seen the figure the night before, clutching my phone like a lifeline. As the hours passed, the room grew colder and an oppressive silence settled in. Then I heard it, the same guttural growl, like a beast in pain. The figure materialized once more, its form shifting and indistinct. This time, it moved closer, its presence more palpable than before. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure didn't answer, but its whispers filled the room, a cacophony of despair and anguish. I couldn't make out the words, but their meaning was clear: suffering, torment, and an insatiable hunger. Suddenly, the door to the room burst open, and a group of the lodge's guests stormed in, their eyes vacant and their movements robotic. They surrounded the figure, chanting in a language I couldn't comprehend. The room seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and I felt myself being drawn into the chaos. Desperation gripped me, and I fled the room, racing down the corridor, past the locked staff-only door and into the lobby. The receptionist's enigmatic smile had turned into a sinister grin as she watched me. "You shouldn't have interfered," she hissed. With that, she too joined the frenzied group, disappearing into the darkness. I knew I couldn't stay in the lodge any longer. With my heart pounding, I fled into the forest, not looking back until I reached the safety of civilization. The Pine Grove Lodge remains a haunting memory, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. I may never fully understand what happened there, but one thing is clear: some secrets are better left undisturbed, and the true nature of human behavior can be far more terrifying than any supernatural force.